All right, welcome to the Explainer. Most people think they've got a pretty good handle on the Bible. But here's the thing. It's packed with some truly bizarre passages, stuff that often gets skipped over, maybe even in church because, well, they're just hard to explain. So today, we're diving right into them.
Yeah, we're about to take a tour through some of the Bible's weirdest corners. But this isn't just about listing off oddities for the sake of it. No, we're going to try and uncover the deeper, often really surprising meanings behind them. So, you ready? Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, communicating with the divine. We're talking about the strange, sometimes supernatural ways people in the Bible talked to God. And let me tell you, it wasn't always just quiet prayer. Sometimes it got a whole lot more direct. So how do you ask God a simple yes or no question? Well, you might use a pair of sacred stones. Meet the Urim and Thummim. Seriously, these were mysterious objects tucked away in the high priest's special garment, and they were used to get a direct answer from God on really critical matters. You can almost think of it like a divine hotline, for those life or death decisions. And here's a perfect example of how they actually worked. So picture this. David is on the run, King Saul is hunting him down, and the stakes could not be higher. David asks God if he should attack the city of Keilah, and the stones say yes. But his men are scared, so he asks again, just to be sure. Again, yes. Then he asks if the people there will betray him to Saul. The stones say yes. So David escapes, saved by this very specific divine guidance. Okay, getting guidance from sacred objects is one thing, right? But sometimes the messenger is even more surprising than the message. In this next story, a message from God comes from a source so unexpected, it completely flips the script on a prophet. And yes, I am talking about a talking donkey. So this prophet, Balaam, he's on his way to curse Israel. But his donkey sees something he can't. An angel of the Lord, sword drawn, blocking their path. 3 times, the donkey tries to save him, veering off the road, crushing his foot against a wall, and finally just laying down. And 3 times, Balaam beats it. And then, the donkey literally speaks, asking, "What have I done to you?" The animal had been saving his life the whole time. Even someone like Moses, who the Bible says spoke with God as one speaks to a friend, even he couldn't handle a direct, totally unfiltered encounter. He actually pleads with God to see his glory, and in return, he gets this really solemn, almost terrifying warning. So what happens? God offers a kind of grace-filled compromise. He places Moses in the cleft of a rock, covers him with his hand, and allows Moses to see only his back as his glory passes by. Now, obviously, this probably isn't meant to be taken literally. It's a powerful figurative way of explaining that a mere human can only witness a tiny fraction of God's overwhelming majesty without being completely, consumed by it. All right, let's switch gears to our next section, curious rules and symbolic acts. This is all about when actions and laws carry this hidden weight. We're going to look at some strange laws and actions that seem pretty bizarre on the surface, but actually carry some really deep ethical and spiritual meaning. Okay, take this prohibition. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Now, this specific command pops up 3 separate times in the Old Testament, and it's not just some random ancient dietary rule. One theory is that it was meant to separate the Israelites from nearby pagan cultures, who might have done something like this in their fertility rituals. Another idea, which is kind of beautiful, is that it's about cultivating compassion. I mean, it forbids a really cruel act, right? Using a mother's own life-giving milk to destroy her child. And this brings us to a super dramatic confrontation. You've got these religious leaders, and they drag a woman caught in adultery in front of Jesus. They're basically using the law of Moses, which commanded that she be stoned to death, to try and trap him. They demand her execution. But what Jesus does next? He just completely flips the script. As her accusers are all standing there, Jesus gives them that famous challenge. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And as they just silently slip away one by one, he turns to the woman and says, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." It's incredible. He replaces this harsh law of condemnation with a radical new principle of compassion. All right, this next one. This is a real head-scratcher. So why would Jesus curse a fig tree for having no fruit when it wasn't even fig season? I mean, on his way to Jerusalem, he's hungry, sees this tree, finds nothing, and just curses it. The Bible itself points out it wasn't the right season. But this wasn't some outburst of anger. No, this was a very deliberate symbolic act. See, it was all a symbolic act. That fig tree, lush with all these leaves but totally barren of fruit, it represented the spiritual barrenness of the nation's leadership. It was this perfect, living metaphor for an outward show of faith with absolutely no genuine substance. The whole thing was a physical picture of the very religious hypocrisy he was about to confront in Jerusalem. Okay, hold on tight, because now we're moving into the truly mind-bending stuff. We're talking visions of awe and terror, glimpses of divine judgment and otherworldly beings that are honestly stranger than most science fiction. So picture this: King Belshazzar of Babylon is throwing this lavish, sacrilegious feast, and during the party, a disembodied hand just appears, and it starts writing these cryptic words on his palace wall: Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. I mean, can you imagine? The party comes to a dead stop. Absolutely terrifying. None of his wise men have a clue what it means. Only the prophet Daniel can decipher it. In the message, it's a message of swift, final judgment. Many meant God has numbered the days of your kingdom. Tekel, you've been weighed on the scales and you don't measure up. And Upharsin, your kingdom is divided and given to others. And just as Daniel said, that very night the king was slain and his kingdom fell. And speaking of mind-bending, get a load of what the prophet Ezekiel sees. He describes God's glory, and it includes these 4 living creatures. Each one has 4 faces: a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. They've got 4 wings, human hands, and legs like polished bronze. And then there are the wheels. They're like a wheel within a wheel, kind of like a gyroscope, and they can move in any direction without even turning. Oh, and their rims are completely covered in eyes. It's this absolutely wild vision symbolizing God's all-seeing omniscience. Then, in the book of Revelation, we get a concept that goes beyond even hell. It's called the second death. And this is the ultimate final fate for those who oppose God. It's described as a lake of fire, which signifies a punishment that is complete and final. And here's the kicker. Into this lake are thrown the beast, the false prophet, and the devil. But it doesn't stop there. Finally, death itself is thrown in. Think about that. This is the ultimate annihilation of all evil, and even the power of death, a final, irreversible consequence for anyone whose name isn't found in the book of life. All right, for our last section, let's meet some of the most mysterious and, frankly, monstrous beings in the Bible. This is the Bible's strange cast of characters, and these aren't just presented as myths or fairy tales. They're described as real creatures with a real purpose. So in the book of Job, God describes these incredible creatures. You have Behemoth, a mighty land dweller with a tail like a cedar tree, a true masterpiece of God's power. Then there's Leviathan, a colossal, armored sea creature representing the primal forces of chaos. And the Ra'im, a ferocious wild ox of immense size. God points to them not as myths, but as real examples of his absolute dominion over the most powerful forces imaginable. So when you put it all together, these stories are way more than just ancient oddities. From talking donkeys to divine eye-covered wheels, these strange stories are not just trivia. They are deliberately unusual for a reason. So what deeper truths about power, mercy, and mystery are they all trying to reveal? Well, they really serve as windows into this ancient worldview, one that's super rich with symbolism designed to make us think differently. They force us to look beyond the literal and ask, what does this actually mean? They challenge us, And they show us that sometimes the strangest stories, well, those are the ones that have the most to say.